Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for starting a small business during an economic disruption. I'm Eleanor Chatterton. I'm a librarian at the St. Louis Public Library, and we're excited to share this program with you. In addition to this program, the St. Louis Public Library has lots of great resources for you for starting a business, including books and online resources. We also have 2 more programs coming up in November and in December, and I will share that information with you in the chat at the end of the program. You're all muted, so if you have a kid doing homework who comes asking for your help, don't need to worry, it's not going to interrupt the program. And if you have to go away and help that kid with some homework, that's all right. You won't miss anything because we're recording today's presentation, and I'll be sending a link to the video in a few days. And so you can just go right back to whatever it was that you missed. During the presentation, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will be monitoring it, and our presenter will be periodically answering them throughout the presentation. And now to our presenter. Our presenter today is Amina Abdul Malik. She is a business counselor with the St. Louis Small Business Development Center. She specializes in startup services and business plan development. And with that, I will turn it over to Amina.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. Thank you all so much for having me and joining me today as we embark on, or I'm sure you all have already started to embark on your journey of small business ownership. But thank you so much for that introduction, Eleanor. As she stated, my name is Amina Abdul Malik, and I am a counselor with the St. Louis Small Business Development Center. I'm not sure if any of you all have heard of the Small Business Development Centers before. If you have, feel free to raise your hands and use that raise your hand feature in the chat. If you have heard of our organization, but if you haven't, the Small Business Development Centers are a nationwide network of business support centers, okay? And so we offer a lot of different services, but we offer one-on-one counseling at no cost to entrepreneurs like yourself who are looking to either start or grow their existing business. We also offer technical assistance and free training such as this one as well. So we assist with things such as business plan development, getting access to loan capital, helping you with a strategic plan, or even succession planning for a business that already exists. If you need help developing a workforce or figuring out how to determine the best target market segments, those are all things up our alley. And if we're not an expert, or if we can't find the assistance that you need, we work with a multitude of other support organizations across the city and county here in St. Louis. And we're always trying to help you or refer you to someone else who can assist you at no or low cost.
Sorry, Amina.
There we go. Oh, no, it's no problem. Zoom, it's a Zoom. It's always something with Zoom. So thank you all so much for joining me. My personal background and experience is in business development and small business and entrepreneurship. I started off at Harrisville State University and got my bachelor's in business administration with a focus in management, and then decided to double down and get my master's in finance from Webster University. Who knows why I chose that one? I don't know. But I love small business. I love entrepreneurship. So I genuinely love what I do. So thank you all so much for coming. Since we have somewhat of a larger group today, I would love for you all to, in the chat box, if you could, if you have access to the chat, to introduce yourselves with your name. If you would like to share your business idea that you have or the type of business that you're planning, we can also share that information, and also anything you're looking to gain from the workshop today. And I'll give us just a couple minutes to put that in the chat if anyone wants to share that information. And then while you all may be typing that information into the chat, we'll talk a little bit about the agenda today. So rather than addressing how to start a small business by topic, so for example, starting off with legal issues and then doing a section on financing, we have found it better at the SBDC, better suited to your needs, to address the steps in a sequence order, okay? So we'll be starting off today by talking about the different parts of the decision of business ownership. How do you know if entrepreneurship is right for you? Everyone is not necessarily meant to be an entrepreneur. So we'll talk about what that decision process looks like for you. We'll also talk about the planning process. Probably my favorite part of business development is how to get yourself set up to create a successful business plan and what are those components of a business plan. We'll go into step 3, which addresses the money. How are we going to fund these beautiful ideas, and how do we determine how we're going to use these funds? And then we'll also talk about other important factors such as selecting a legal structure for your business, the differences between an LLC, a sole proprietorship, and a corporation, how to choose a name, what goes into choosing a name. And then we'll wrap it up by talking about some of that fun legal content we always love to learn, how to register your business on a local level, all the way up to the federal level, protecting yourself in the cases of taxes, and making sure that you're aware of the different types of licensing there is needed for different types of businesses. And then we'll close out today by discussing how you can start off strong. And I have to mention Dee Hoover, I love your virtual background. I wish I was on that train or bus looking out too as well. So I love that virtual background. So let's go to the chat here and see, we have some great introductions. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing some of these correctly. I have one from Karen. I'm an artist and working on seashell art to sell, maybe over Etsy. And that's a very, very popular thing to do is sell over Etsy right now. And we'll definitely be talking about the different ramifications there are when you have an online business versus having a brick and mortar. So thank you for that. Dana, physical therapist, recently added a master's in herbal medicine and wants to open your own practice. Thank you for that. Herbal medicine is something that I feel like I need constantly with how much I sit in my chair. We have an introduction from Bridget. Hello, Bridget. You are starting an editing services business. And Ms. Hoover, a medical and doctor advisory service for people without an advocate. Scheduling appointments, getting approval for tests from insurance, and sending appeals. Definitely a need for that. We have an introduction from John. My name is John, and I am just at the very beginning of the process. It's great that you're here then, John. I hope to sell smokable herbs that can be mixed in with more expensive herbs to make a smoking budget go further. Another introduction from Venkat, a software engineer, would like to open a consulting company or buy a gas station. Another participant here, hi Rosalind, started an online traveling business. Ooh, and need help with your LLC and free marketing techniques. Then we have Kristen, hello, running a local club now for 4 years, interested in learning how to support that, and is it even smart to open or expand a new business right now? That's going to be a very good question and something we also talk about as well. Vetting your business idea before you take it all the way to market. And then Hoover, Ms. Hoover said, this is the Canadian Rockies Trail, and my name is pronounced like Idea without the I. Okay, gotcha. Dia, thank you. And then hello from in Patterson. So thank you all so much for those introductions. I hope today that you all get a wealth of information, not only from the presentation, but I will be sending out a bunch of additional resources that I will mention throughout this presentation that include a comprehensive startup small business reference guide that will guide you through some of these steps that we'll be discussing for some of these things here in the presentation. So step 1, how to decide if small business ownership is right for you. The first step in deciding and making this decision is understanding what role that small business is going to play in your everyday life. What are you going to get out of this business? Other than that monetary gain and that instant money reward, you can also answer this in the chat if you can. What are some of the reasons right now that you all would like to start your own small business? Some of the common reasons that I typically hear from clients are wanting to have additional or more flexibility or time to spend with their family and friends, wanting to be able to make their own decisions. I see Bridget mentioned here, pursuing my passion, expressing creativity, All of these are typical and great reasons to start a small business. However, we want to make sure that you as the business owner understand that it is going to take, in some cases, even longer hours to be successful, or even more time, and sometimes less time with family and friends, because you operate every facet of the business. So if you're going to go into entrepreneurship, you have to be comfortable with calculated and leverage risk. And here are some statistics that kind of back up that claim. As you can see from the first statistic on the slide, small businesses make up the majority of U.S. firms in our economy. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the U.S. economy. There are more small businesses that are opening than closing, but 20% of those businesses that have employees do fail within the first year. And there could be a lot of reasons for why that is that we'll get into here shortly, but only half of businesses actually make it past year 5. And that's regardless of if they have employees or not. 42% of those small businesses fail because there is no market, and 29% of those startups fail because they simply put didn't have enough cash. So why is there such a high rate of failure for startups? A lot of good reasons for that. There are hundreds of reasons that a small business or a startup could fail, and you can see some of these listed here. Unexpected growth. Sometimes a small business starts up and they haven't leveraged their growth enough and aren't able to handle some of that increased revenue that they get. Sometimes a business has a great idea, but picks a terrible location and can't reach the customers that they need to. Sometimes a business owner has a part of a great idea or has some strengths or skills, but has a lack of experience. But everything on this list are all of the common reasons that startups fail. Everything on this list could be eliminated or mitigated by the first thing on the list, which is inadequate front-end planning. So the theme of today's presentation and the theme of you developing your business model and then your business plan and then launching your business will be to plan, plan, plan. Now, obviously, plans cannot always be kept. Plans certainly tend to change, but a great plan will give you a solid foundation to adapt to those potential changes within your business. And I'm going to take a look at the chat, and if anyone had any questions so far before we get into the planning phase, I will read a comment here from Dia. I have 2 companies. It's a lot of pressure, healthcare, your own pension, etc., but you don't fit into corporate America. You're interested in the medical business because you spent the last 6 years advocating for your husband. He's seen 60 doctors. It's been awful and no one will help you, including doctor's offices, prescription appeals, insurance companies. And you're completely right about that. And that is one of there's a few different ways to come up with a good or a good business idea. One of those ways is to see a problem in your everyday life that needs to be solved and figure out a solution to that problem. As we go into this planning phase, I'm going to talk about the different components of a business plan, but that's kind of one of the first steps is what you've already done, Dia, is figure out a problem that there is and figure that you can be the person or figure out a solution to that problem. So when you're thinking about the planning phase, the first step is to evaluate yourself. You can't go into business without having a clear understanding of your own personal strengths and weaknesses. Within this small business reference guide that I'm going to send to you guys, there is going to be a checklist in there that includes some self-analysis questions, okay? These self-analysis questions are not for you to start beating yourself up and say, oh, I don't have the skills I need to start this business. But if you identify that there is a skill that you don't have or that you need to be, that needs to be strengthened, then part of your planning process needs to incorporate that, how you're going to either obtain that skill, which could either be you learning that skill or hiring or outsourcing that skill, okay? The checklist will also help you analyze certain characteristics and skills within yourself that you possess. So those are the things that will help you as you're starting your business. And then you will also be able to determine if that business idea is even feasible or not. So the checklist in the reference guide, and I'm going to make sure and put in my notes that I highlight the page of that so you're not just searching for that checklist within that guide as well when I send that out. So after you do a self-analysis and you get a good sense of what your strengths and weaknesses are and what potential challenges you're going to potentially face as you start this business, then you're ready to evaluate where the business will be, or the market or industry that the business will be entering, okay? You want to, there's several different approaches for evaluating your business model and the market that it's entering. But one of the ones that's in the reference guide that we use within the SBDC is called the Business Model Canvas. And we'll actually be teaching another webinar, I think that's in December with the public library, on how to create a basic business model canvas. But what a business model canvas is, it creates a hypotheses for your business that can be tested and adapted before you take this business to launch and before you take the effort of creating a full detailed business plan. The business model canvas is also known as a lean business plan. And it categorizes your business into 9 different categories, which each represent a different building block in terms of your business structure. So you do a business model canvas by working through each category to develop a business model where all of those different 9 blocks intersect. I'm not going to get that deep into it because I'll confuse you more than I make you understand, but we will be teaching a webinar on it, and there will be information on it in that reference guide. And that is one approach to kind of figure out how your business should be structured and if you are going to be targeting the right people with the right idea in the right place. Ultimately, you need to find some type of way to analyze the feasibility of your idea. After you have evaluated your business idea, you want to understand how much money it's going to take to facilitate that idea, or how much money in startup costs it's going to take you to open the doors, so to speak, for that business, even if it's online. How will the cash flow through this business? And where will the money come from that's needed to start this company? How many of you, and you can raise your hand or type it in the chat, have seen a business plan template, started to maybe write a business plan in some capacity, or have had any kind of interaction with the business plan so far? If you've seen one business plan template, you've pretty much seen them all in a lot of ways. In my 4 years of doing, okay, Karen says she has, great. In my 4 years of doing business plan development, I have seen over 25 different business plan templates. However, each of those different templates, they may use different language. However, they're always, every business plan, every successful business plan is always going to address the 4 basic topics that are shown on this slide, okay? The first major component of any business plan is the business description. This part of the plan is going to describe the why behind your business, okay? This is your hypothesis. This includes what your business is as well, but this part also includes what your value proposition is or your promise to your customers. What is it what solution are you providing to your customers? How are you solving, or why are you choosing to solve these customer problems? What makes these problems important to you and those potential customers, okay? The rest of your business plan, after the business description, is for you to prove that you can achieve that hypothesis, okay? So the second main component of any business plan is going to be the market and customer section. Now, this section has different names and different templates, but all in all, this section is very important because it discusses the who for your business. This section describes your market or your industry that you're going into. It also describes the target customers that you will be going after and communicating with. It describes what's important to them, their key traits and characteristics. And this section is also where you're going to let the person reading the plan know how you plan to communicate with those potential target customers as well. Okay, and this is where your marketing plan would go. The third section is details the operations and organizational structure of your business. This section describes how things will be controlled and who has influence within the company. So in this section, you will be describing the legal structure of the company. Is it a registered limited liability company in the state of Missouri, or is it a C corporation? Also in this section, you'll describe your management team, which right now is just you, but you'll also describe what key roles your business will need as it grows, and any key advisors that you have, and how the operations of the company work. So how do you actually make money from your company? What is the sales plan? Everything like that goes into the operations section. And then finally, the last key component of any business plan is going to be the financial section, one of my favorites in the business plan. This section seems to cause a lot of anxiety for small business owners, understandably so, because this section explains how much money it's going to take for you to start the business and keep it up and running until you consistently hitting a break-even point, okay? It also is going to describe where the money is coming from. This section includes financial statements, okay? There's three main financial statements. You have an income statement. The income statement is going to describe what a company has made in sales and what a company has spent in expenses. And then you will also have a balance sheet projection. The balance sheet, simply put, shows you what your company owns and what it owes at a certain period, a certain moment in time. And then the last statement that banks love to see is going to be your cash flow statement. That financial statement shows how much cash on hand you have at the end of every month, okay? Very important for the bank to see, because you could have a business that makes $1 million in revenue, but if the cash isn't flowing and they only have cash in months 10 and 12, then how good of a loan is that going to be, or how attractive of a loan is that going to be for a bank, okay? So we'll get into kind of what lenders look at down the line here in just a few moments, but bankers, when they look at a business plan, they're going to look very heavily at those financial projections. We could also call them pro forma statements, which is the same thing as a financial projection as well. So once you have evaluated your idea and you have a clear understanding of the components of that business plan, now you are ready to get started with some market research. Because before you can start writing up a plan and describing how you're going to sell to these potential customers, you have to have an understanding of the industry you're going into, what trends and implications there are within that industry. If you are a physical-based business, are customers going to be moving from one area to another that may make you need to move your business? Or is there going to be a potential tax increase in the city that may impact you and your customers? So you want to have an idea of what trends there are within the industry you're going into. You also want to make sure that if you are a physical business especially, your market size is big enough for you to be able to make enough money, essentially. Just because there is 5 people that think your idea is good doesn't mean that that is a sustainable business idea. There have to be enough people to consistently want to purchase that product or service for it to be considered an attractive market segment, okay? Then you also want to have a clear understanding of your competitors. I tell my startup clients this, oftentimes you think of your competitors as those people doing the exact same thing. So I have a client who is thinking of opening a laundromat, okay? And of course, when I asked their competitors, they gave me some of the popular laundromats. That is going to be your direct competitor, but your number one competitor as a startup small business owner is getting your customers to understand that they have a problem that you are the best solution to solve. That's your number one competition. And your competitors are not just those doing the same as you, but they are anyone who is solving the same problems you are with either the same type of solution or even a different one. So for that laundromat, yes, her competitors are other laundromats, but her competitors are also going to family and friends' houses to wash clothes, or having a washing service come and pick up their clothes. So you want to try to think outside the box in terms of who is solving your customers' problems right now, okay? And going into customers, your customer is going to be your best friend in terms of the planning process, okay? Everything surrounding your marketing plan and strategy should be relevant to who you're targeting and who you're wanting to communicate with. The first way to segment your customers or group them together based on similar traits is going to be through demographics. And this is where I will plug the library and Eleanor and her wonderful team there. They have, and she's going to speak about this briefly at the end of the presentation, but the public library has a suite of market research tools that can assist you with finding information about different types of potential customers, where different types of people live, based on education, age, even lifestyle traits they can search by. So that is a great place, and I will let her kind of give detail on how to get started with that. But the first step is to understand who these customers are and what similar traits they may have, okay? So if you're starting that laundromat, you know a lot of your customers may be single parents or college students, okay? So these are how you start to put together a market segment, okay? Think of your customers that you think may be ideal for the business and start to try to figure out, what do I know about them? What commonalities do I know that they share? Typically you're not just going to have one segment, you will have several segments. That doesn't mean that all of them are going to be as attractive, but it is fully okay to have several different target market segments as well. Other than demographics, which are things like age, education, income level, race, gender, family size, you also can segment customers based on lifestyle traits, values, buying behaviors, and all of those things fall under psychographic traits, okay? So the better understanding you have of your potential customers, the easier it is to sell to them. I tell clients, you can sell to everyone, but it is almost impossible for you to target everyone, okay? In relation to figuring out who your customers are, there are 7 questions on this slide that can assist you in understanding your customer segment. The first 4 of these questions are actually demographic-based questions. So who are your customers? How many are they? How much do they spend? And how often do they spend? All of those questions you can ask yourself on a demographic level, okay? So these questions help you identify the business that exists in your market area already, and will help you kind of identify the customers that you will need to serve, okay? Those first 4 questions are going to kind of be the basis for your sales projection. And then the last 3 questions help you understand your customer well enough to create a value proposition for them, okay? And the last 3 questions help you make your solution the best for their problem, okay? So understanding what influences them within a buying decision. So if I go back to some of the examples we have here, even if I go to, you know, the online traveling business here that was mentioned, thinking about what those people or what the customers that you think would frequent that website value, would help you then go out and design your marketing tools or communications and help you design that website. So having a great understanding of your customer is going to be key in that business plan. And one of the things that I can personally assist with is business plan development. That's one of my specialties. I just wrapped up 2 plans last week with clients. And so I actually can sit with you. We work through a business plan together. We can tap into the library for their free market research. And I have a bunch of research options as well through my organization. So that's definitely something that I can assist with as well. Any questions on the planning section before we move over into the nitty-gritty, funding the plan? And I'm going to quickly pour a little bit of water here, and then I'll continue. Okay, no questions about the planning. Then I will continue. And if something pops up, I can come back as well. So funding the plan. This is where, when I'm working with you on your business plan and we're about halfway through, you're starting to feel good, like you have an understanding of who your customers are and what your idea is and that structure of the business. This is when we start to have questions, okay? How much money is it going to take for me to fund this idea? The reason why we address funding at this point in the presentation is because you're not able to fund the plan or have an idea of, you're not able to really launch the business and move anything forward and register it until you have a clear understanding of how much it's going to take, okay? And not only how much it's going to take to start, but how much it's going to take to sustain, okay? Coming up with 3-year projections for the business, not just knowing I need $20,000 to get started this month, but having an understanding of where your business should be feasibly 3 months from start, 6 months from start, a year into after starting that business. So the funding part of the plan is where we answer all those questions. And I promise that at the end of this section in your planning process, you end up feeling empowered, and a lot more confident in your business idea because you can see if it's going to work or not from the numbers. So in the first years of operation with the business, dollars tend to flow from the business owner into the business. So this is why there is a great deal of risk for you all as entrepreneurs. And that's also why not having enough cash is the second most common reason for startups failing. And so that's why I spend a lot of time on this section, and I spend a lot of time on this part of the planning process with all of my clients. So there are 4 different components in a very basic equation you can use to determine how much money you need to start your business, okay? The first is your startup cost. These are all of the expenses that are required for you to get your business up and running, okay? When I say up and running, that means if you're an online business, everything is going to take for you to be able to receive your first sale on that website. If you're a brick and mortar, everything you need to get the doors open, okay? You as the new business owner want to get as detailed as possible as you can when considering the startup costs. Let's think about a good example, a doctor's office, okay? When I think of a doctor's office and I'm trying to come up with a list of startup costs, you know that I'm not going to forget the cost of that $50,000 x-ray machine, okay? But, you may be able, I know we have a doctor here who could tell me that that might be an inaccurate cost, but what you may not remember and think about is the cost of the stapler in that office or the beautiful paintings that you see in the waiting room. So when you're thinking about coming up with a list of startup costs, it's very easy to forget the small things, to forget those certifications that you have to pay for in order to provide that service, but try to get as detailed as possible with what you include in that list of items. So startup costs can also include your legal fees, if you had to pay for initial inventory or special software as well for your company, okay? The second part of the equation to determine how much you need to start your business is going to be those initial operating expenses. Initial operating expenses are going to, or operating expenses as a whole, are any of those reoccurring costs that you have to cover, even if you don't have any customers. So these are things that include things like rent, employee wages, if you prepay for your business insurance, or even utilities are also included in these operating expenses. So typically you want to cover a few months of your initial operating operating expenses within that startup cost number, okay? You wanna make sure that you don't just have enough to turn the lights on for the day, that you at least have enough to turn the lights on for the first month. The third part of this equation, and this part sometimes gets commingled into the operating expenses section, and this is a very basic equation that we're using here. When we go into financial projections together, I have a full spreadsheet and methodology to come up with projections, but this is what kind of gets us started. Working capital is something very, very important for you to always consider and have on hand, okay? Too often, small business owners only have enough money to cover their expenses and do not have enough money to cover things like, let's say you had a client who purchased a larger order than expected for that month. They've been a client of yours for 6 months. Every month they purchase the same thing, but this month they needed 60 more items from you. What do you do if you are only allocated for your inventory budget for that month and don't have any extra working capital on hand? What do? Then you're pulling from your emergency funds, which we'll talk about next. So it's important. Working capital is the cash on hand you need to cover those day-to-day operating expenses, okay? One of the biggest parts of working capital, and please, if you are a service-based company, make sure you listen to this part, accounts receivable. Is anybody familiar with accounts receivable? I see Dia, yes, nodding her head. If you are, accounts receivable is an account on your financial statement, which is used when a customer receives your product or service and they promise to pay you sometime in a later date, typically within 30 days, okay? This typically happens when you provide a service. It's sometimes easier when you provide a product, but a lot of times you'll consult with someone or you provide something and they'll say, oh, and you give them an invoice with net 30, give them 30 days to pay. The accounts receivable account is where that money sits. Accounts receivable is then converted to cash when you receive that money. So what happens when you don't receive payment after 60 days? And I see, Bill, you cannot repo a service. You're right. That's another problem. After that, you provided that service and you're 60 days out, you haven't received payment, and then you get another contract saying that you have to go out and purchase supplies that cost you $2,000. You're still waiting on $3,000 from that last job. So as a service business owner especially, you want to make sure that you are keeping up with your accounts receivable and making sure to collect on payments promptly, okay? Because when your accounts receivable gets behind, then your cash gets behind, and then it becomes a cash flow issue, okay? And Rosalind, I see your question here, and we will be getting into the financial part right in the next section, and so I'll be sure to answer that question about that business checking account as well. The last part of that four-part equation is emergency funds, and this is where people forget. Emergency funds are obviously that money you need to help if an unexpected circumstance occurs. And that could be something that is none of the business's fault at all. That could be something as simple as your supplier increasing the price, a new law increasing minimum wage for your employees, or having to hire more staff or independent contractors for a particular project. So all of these reasons, and you know anything can happen, so you want to have emergency funds bundled into that startup cost number, okay? And a lot of times, believe it or not, even when startups are applying for a loan, they don't include emergency funds in that request. But include it in there, pad it in there now so that if you need those funds later, you will have them. Another benefit of having emergency funds is that you'll have a little bit more of liquid assets. And I just want to bring up liquid assets so you all have that understanding. A liquid asset, or an asset is obviously something that the business owns or that you personally own. So a liquid asset is something that can easily and quickly be converted to cash. So emergency funds either have cash or liquid assets as their emergency funds. So a liquid asset is something that you can quickly and easily convert over to cash, okay, with little to no value as well. So this is just a summary of that equation we went over. And this will be the actual amount that you would need to start your small business. Startup costs, adding in those operating expenses, the working capital, and then finally the emergency funds. What happens when people start to estimate their costs? Sometimes people tend to underestimate their expenses and overestimate and get optimistic about their sales. And that's natural. We get excited about our ideas and we start to think optimistically. When writing and coming up with financial projections for your company, you want to do the opposite. You want to overestimate if necessary on expenses and give the bare minimum underestimate on revenue, because that's the number you need to know will be your worst case scenario. You need to know what that number is. And then you can create those more optimistic projections and estimates as well. After you determine how much it's going to take, then you have to figure out where that money is going to come from. So there is a lot of different common sources of funding for small businesses. The small businesses are usually funded in two forms, debt and equity. Debt is money that you typically obtain by borrowing and typically is repaid through the cash flow from the business. And equity financing is typically contributed by owners or investors from outside sources and typically is not repaid through the operations of the company. So those are the kind of key differences between going and getting a loan or getting an investor, okay? The first source of funding for you as the small business owner has already been yourself. How many of you all have already put some type of money into your business idea? Anybody? Whether that's signing up for a class, getting a bank account somewhere. I see Christian has mentioned that. Yes. So as soon, the first source of funding for a small business is typically going to be you, the business owner. And of course, you are the entire management team for the company. And then another potential source is going to be friends and family. So oftentimes, if you deal with friends and family, the money comes at no or low interest. But if you're working with friends and family, it is imperative that if the money comes in the form of a loan, that you state the terms of that loan in writing, please. If the money is in the form of a gift, it's still very, very wise for you to obtain a letter to that effect from the person who's donating that money, so that everything is clear between the business and the family, okay? So everything you do with your business, get it in writing. And in fact, if you then, let's say your family member gifted you some money for your company and then you go and are trying to get a micro loan later from a bank, the lender may ask for those letters when they're evaluating your loan request as well. So also good to have for that reason. When you think about debt financing, typical debt financing comes from your banks. You also have economic development corporations and organizations locally, or even sometimes government agencies will do their own lending. When you're thinking about a bank loan, there are a host of different things the bank will want to see, but the first thing they're going to want to see is that the business plan that you have created and your idea is sound and feasible, okay? There's two main types of small business loans. There's non-SBA loans and there's SBA loans, okay? I do not work directly for any of the SBA guaranteed banks, but what we do at the SBDC is get you bank ready, help you through that business plan, get your financial projections ready, and then refer you to several different SBA-backed banks that will be the most attractive for that deal based on our experiences in the past, okay? So we try to hook you up with the most favorable banker that will get you the best interest rate and best terms. Now, the big difference if you are thinking about applying for a loan for your business in the future, keep in mind that the major benefit of an SBA-backed loan is that the SBA guarantees a large portion of that loan amount for the bank. So since the SBA will guarantee up to, I believe, 85% of their loans, that makes those loans a lot less risky and more attractive for those banks, okay? So that's why it's a lot better and why business owners are always going to try to get an SBA loan first, because since it's easier and less risky on the banks, you're typically able to get lower interest rates and lower down payment equity injections, okay? Other than your traditional small business loans, there are other funding sources such as private investors who may either want payback expected on a certain amount of terms or either an equity or ownership position in your company. You also have crowdfunding, which allows people to buy into your idea, supplier credit, and even things like grants. Grants are always a hot button topic in the area of entrepreneurship. And I also believe that the public library has information and databases in relation to grants, but I will tell you all this about grants. Grants are typically not going to be accessible for most for-profit businesses. If you are in the tech space, or if you are solving a social justice issue, you have a much better chance at getting a lot of the grants that are out there. But there are a lot of different grants, but grants are very competitive and they are not free money. With every grant comes a list of reporting that you have to do and an expectation of how that money is going to be spent. So just keep that in mind, that if you do start searching for grants and things like that, that they're not just free money, and that it's very seldom that I see a for-profit small business get a traditional grant, okay? But I know Eleanor may be able to tell about the different things they have in relation to grants, because I'm pretty sure that they may have something in relation to that, yes, okay? Almost done with the funding section here. And we were talking a little bit about the bank loans and going into a little bit more detail into what banks are looking at when they're evaluating loan applications. The rate of small business failure is high. We talked about that at the beginning of the presentation. Because of that high risk of failure, banks are very cautious when they're considering a loan for a small business. The application requirements do vary from lender to lender, and that's why you come to an advisor like us that can help you figure out the best lender for your deal. But every lender on a base level is going to want to see a business plan first, and then eventually they will want to see tax returns and a personal financial statement from the owner. So just because if you register your business as a LLC, which we'll talk about next in the legal structure section, just because you have some separation from your business, you still are attached to the business directly financially. So any bank is going to want to see your personal financial background. They're going to want to see those 3 financial statements that I mentioned: the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And to be honest with you, when the bank looks at your business plan, they're going to look at the executive summary, which is a summary of that plan and that idea, and then they're going to take a deep look at the financials, okay? So they're not going to obviously spend as much time on the narrative section as another type of party would. Also within a loan application, they're going to want to see detail of how you're going to spend the funds and where you're going to get the funding from. So how much of an equity injection do you plan to put into that loan request? So if you're requesting $100,000, are you able to put in $10,000, $20,000? And then there also, if you are planning on purchasing any equipment, They want to know that you've done your research and have an understanding of where you can purchase this equipment from and how much that potential equipment will cost. Okay. So when bankers and lenders are evaluating a loan request, they typically look at something called the 5 C's of credit. And you can keep the 5 C's of credit with you. This will be something that pops up in a lot of different finance circles that you'll hear about. And the 5 C's of credit include cash, capacity, collateral, conditions, and character. So first, the lender will want to know what your equity contribution is. Typically, and this is another benefit of going through the SBA for funding, typically your equity injection can get as low as 10%. I have seen a startup business, and it was a kind of risky business as well, get over $300,000 with a 10% equity injection. Now, is that common? Not necessarily. Your equity injection can be as low as 10%. Typically, you'll see anywhere between that 10 to 25% interest, depending on the risk of the business, the personal capacity of the business owner, and several other factors, okay? The lender will also evaluate the business owner's capacity. The bank wants to know that you have the ability to cover the expenses and cover not only your expenses, but your loan payment as well through the sale of your products and services, okay? So this is where the banker, the lender will look at those financial projections that you've created and make sure that they are feasible and that you are feasibly collecting enough cash to cover their monthly loan payment. You're not expected, and when a lender is looking at your capacity and looking at your financial projections, you're not going to be expected to be profitable from day one. But by year 3, year 4, the business should typically be showing profitability, okay, within those financial projections. Collateral, we've probably heard of collateral in different cases, in different aspects before, but collateral, simply put, is what you would pledge to the bank to give them if they cannot get their depositors their money back, okay? Inventory and other assets of the business can be used as collateral, but keep in mind, when those things are used as collateral, they are not valued at the cost to you, but they are valued at a much lower discounted value to what you paid, okay? Collateral most of the time is things that you personally own, okay? Then finally, the lender will also evaluate the conditions of the loan. What are the conditions in that market? And then what are the conditions and the terms of that loan? And then finally, your character. When you are applying for a loan, an owner's background check might be completed, okay? So they do want to know that you not only have the character to pay this money back, but that you also have the knowledge and skills and overall capacity to get them their money back. So those are the basic things that a lender will evaluate. But the good thing is when you come to the lender with your business plan, your business registration, it becomes a process. So it's not just a one day, you apply and you get your $100,000. It starts a relationship with that banker, and they will correspond with you directly to ask for the different documents and things they need. And then you also will have the SBDC advisement to say, oh, they asked me for a personal financial statement. I need help. Okay. So that's also something we assist with during that loan process if you are going that route. So let me go to the chat, and if anyone had any questions about that funding section, and I'm going to answer Rosalind's question now before I get into the legal structure, even though we are going to talk a little bit about the EIN. I'll briefly say this, Rosalind, and then I'll get to this in this section here. Starting a business checking account, depending on the bank, I typically go through credit unions and recommend those. They have typically lower fee structures. Typically, you will need your articles of organization and an operating agreement, okay? But I'm going to discuss those things a little bit in more detail here in just a moment. Did anybody else have any other questions about that funding section? And Dee, I see you said you're working with the SBA your first time ever. Yes, yes. SBA and working with any federal government entity when it comes to lending, they are going to want before you were born, information from before you were born, so to speak, even. But the benefit of it is that you are getting a much better deal and much better terms, much more favorable terms that will add to your flexibility later. So the SBA will get everything from you on the front end, but when you're paying that loan back, you'll be a lot, hopefully, more comfortable than if you went to just, you know, a regular bank for that loan. All right. So now, after you've wrapped up your business plan, you have gotten your financial projections and done and understand how much money you're going to have on any given day. And yes, credit score is very important for everything. Yes. And I'll say that credit score, if you're at 700, people often ask, what is the credit score for small business lending? 700 is going to be your safe bet. 650 is workable, not going to be as favorable of terms. So higher interest rates. Okay. And I see another question from Jennifer. How much do you think to start up? How much? I'm assuming you may be asking, how much do I think you would need? And I'll tell you, I can't answer that question, but I can ask you a series of questions that would help you come up with that conclusion. Like, how many people are you trying to serve in a given time? How much space do you think you need to facilitate those services? And then we would be able to kind of wrap up into how much you would think you would need. So there is a methodology, and if you all need assistance with figuring out how to come up with the startup cost number, that's definitely something we could set up a counseling session, and I could work with you through that. Selecting a legal structure is very important for 3 key reasons, okay? Number 1, selecting a legal structure will determine how much of a risk you have of being sued, quite frankly. It also will determine how simple the structure of your business is and how much time and cost is going to be involved in it. And then the biggest, or one of the biggest considerations for choosing a business legal structure is going to be the tax implications of that business structure. No matter what structure you select, you should always speak with some type of professional about it. You know, you could even consider myself a professional at this point. And if you are going into business with another person, you should always speak to a lawyer to get that business operating agreement structured properly to where both parties are protected. We are going to discuss the different types of legal structures there are here. And there is a table in your business reference guide that I will be sending out that will also kind of highlight this discussion of advantages and disadvantages between each structure. So the sole proprietorship. Right now, if you all have done any business for yourselves without doing any registration for the company, if you've done something for a family or friend or done a special project, you are a sole proprietor. For that reason, sole proprietors are the most common form of small business ownership here in the United States. A sole proprietor is one person or a married couple, and there are a bunch of benefits to being a sole proprietor because there is no formal legal structure to this type of business. So because of that, you as the owner get to reap all of the profits of that business. There is no legal structure for that entity, so your profits are only going to be taxed once. That's your personal tax rate. You get to make all of the decisions. There is no outside interruptions. There is no organizational cost because you don't have to register anything. There's no legal restrictions because you're not legal in that regard. And it's very simple to organize. In fact, if you are a sole proprietor, you legally have the right to do business as yourself, okay? So I would be doing business as Amina Abdul Malik. As a sole proprietor, the only registration you may want to do is a fictitious name or a DBA. And I'll give a definition of that later. But a DBA allows you to use another name than your name for your business. But other than that, as a sole proprietor, you have no name protection. You have no separate legal status. So you end up looking like the gentleman in my slide here because since you are the business and there is no legal separation or legal separate status, you have unlimited liability. Okay? So you are on the hook for everything for that company. So if the business gets sued, you are on the hook. Your personal assets are immediately on the hook. Okay? And since you don't have any separate legal status, who's going to give you money for your business other than friends and family? It's going to be almost impossible to find structured financing. You're not going to be able to get a bank loan. Investors are probably going to look at you with a side eye if you don't have your business registered in some capacity. So a sole proprietorship is a great way to get started. And honestly, if you've already been operating any type of business in any capacity informally, you are already a sole proprietor and a part of the largest amount of U.S. types of business in the country here. So let's talk about the most attractive form of business ownership here in the state, and that's the limited liability company, okay? The limited liability company is actually a form of a fairly new type of business here in the country, and it added a lot of flexibility for business owners by combining the flexibility of a sole proprietorship with some of the structure of a corporation. What the limited liability company does is just that. It provides a veil between you and your company, or a layer of protection, so to speak, okay? That is because the LLC, once you register that, is its own separate legal entity owned by you. Owners and LLCs are typically seen as members. So if you hear that term member, just understand that it's the same thing as owner. But when you go and register your LLC, they will ask you about members. So that sometimes gets confusing for people. And I'll stop and say very quickly, this is another thing that we assist with, and all of these are free services that I'm mentioning. So I can sit with you and help you walk through registering your LLC on the Secretary of State website directly. So since the LLC is a separate legal entity, members of that LLC or owners are only going to be responsible for the debt up to their amount of their investment, okay? So you're not on, if there was several members in an LLC, those members are not going to be liable for the entire risk of that company. And if you are just a single member LLC, which many of you are going to be, you are on the hook for those funds because you are the only owner of the company. In terms of taxes, this is another very, very attractive part of the LLC. LLCs are also seen as a pass-through entity, just like sole proprietorship. So if you own an LLC, you are still going to be taxed just one time at your personal rate. And you will have a Schedule C, which is the profit or loss from your business, added on to your personal tax return versus having to file a completely separate tax return for your company, okay? People oftentimes get concerned. When you register your LLC, that does not mean that you have to do anything with it. That's another benefit of the LLC. In my opinion, it's very cost efficient to form, because when you form an LLC, you form it one time as long as you set it up to be perpetual, and then it exists for the life of the business until you file an amendment to terminate that LLC. You don't have to go and then file any other paperwork. You don't have to go and collect income. Nothing has to happen at that time until you're ready. So you can register the LLC at any time, and there's not going to be an immediate countdown and timeline of things you have to do at that point. And there's no ramification to your taxes just for having an LLC. There can also be an unlimited amount of owners within an LLC, and capital is easy to raise because you can sell interest. So instead of selling stock like a corporation, you sell an interest in the company. And so that makes it easier to raise capital than if you were a sole proprietor, because you can't really raise any capital as a sole proprietor or sell any type of ownership. A few disadvantages of the LLC that, in my opinion, are somewhat debatable, okay? The first one is extremely debatable to me, but in the fact that it's costly to form. In a sense, yes, it's more costly to form than a sole proprietorship, which is free, but it's still going to be considerably cheaper to form than a corporation, which is the next level, the next type of business structure. LLCs cost $50 on the Secretary of State's website. In fact, it's $51.25 with a $1.25 convenience fee that I have memorized because that's how many registrations I do. However, please keep in mind, do not go to the Secretary of State office, because if you do, the cost to fill out the paper form there is $105 for the same thing. So please make sure that if you are registering your LLC that you try to get it done on the Secretary of State's website, because it'll save you $50, okay? Once you pay that $50, there is no other cost associated with you managing that LLC. There's no type of annual reporting that has to be done. It just exists, okay? LLCs don't have investors or stock, so anybody that invests in the company and becomes a member is essentially a partner, okay? So it's a little bit different. So if you're planning on selling stock in the future, that's kind of going to be when we get into that corporation aspect of things. And there is still personal tax liability. Yes, when you register your limited liability company, it creates a veil of protection. If the business gets sued, it's the business owned by the owner getting sued. That does not mean the owner is not on the hook for that judgment. That means that your personal assets will not be immediately impacted as long as the business handles its obligations, okay? So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that, oh, I register an LLC and I'm off the hook. No, it just means that you have a layer of protection surrounding you. That is very, very important. I'm not going to go into detail, but there is a way for LLCs to also elect to be taxed as something called an S corporation, and that will allow you to sell stock in the future, but still have the flexibility of the LLC registration. And if you are interested in that, we could talk about it on a one-off during the counseling session. But typically, a traditional LLC is going to be the most attractive form of business ownership for most single-member businesses, okay? Now, let's talk about the corporation, which is going to be our last type of business structure here that's common in the state of Missouri. And there are a lot of advantages to the C corporation. The C corporation has the biggest layer of protection between you and your business. It also is seen as its own separate legal entity, and your liability as a C corporation shareholder is limited to your shareholder investment, okay? Unless you take on additional responsibilities such as guaranteeing a loan to the company or something like that. Now, the thing with the corporation as well, you have the ability to sell stock. Okay, so capital is somewhat easy to raise because you have the ability for people to be able to easily buy in and transfer ownership through the selling of that stock. And then you can also pay out fringe benefits to employees, such as meals and different vehicles and things like that that aren't just listed in the immediate benefit packages for your employees. So I say this about corporations. Typically, small business owners, you don't need to become a C corporation. A C corporation is going to be advantageous for several reasons. If you are planning on having a lot of employees or having employees at some point down the line, I say a lot of employees. If you are doing manufacturing or have a warehouse space, if you are going to have multiple locations, or if you know you plan on selling stock. Also, you can start off as another legal structure and then elect to become a C Corp down the line as well if necessary, which will always be my recommendation, okay? The benefits of a C corporation for you as that startup owner are that the double taxation is going to be the main one, okay? So the profits of the C corporation are always taxed twice. So first you have the C corporation has to file its own corporate tax return and pay that corporate tax rate on that corporation's income. And then second, any profits that any of the individual stockholders had will you will have to pay that on your personal tax return as well. So you have to pay taxes on your profits from the business, as well as the corporation has to pay their corporate income tax as well. So that creates a double taxation, especially if you are just the sole owner of a company. There's really not going to be a very good reason for you to elect to become a C corporation. Also, C corporations have to file annual reports and fees, okay? So the LLC is $50 one time. C corporations, the cost of registering a C corporation is based on the estimated revenue. And so it can become very, very costly to register that corporation, work with a lawyer to create the reporting that needs to get done. And you also have to create a board of directors and adopt bylaws. So it is a very, very formal type of business that is not typically necessary for most startup small business owners. And I see some questions in the chat, and this is the last slide here, and I'll be able to answer those before we wrap it up with the registration section. Registering your name. What goes into picking a name? Before you pick a name, think about what you want that name to convey and the message that you want it to convey. Try not to pick a business name that is too lengthy or uses a weird spelling, because everything now is about search engine optimization and making sure your business gets seen. And so you don't want the name that you pick to be hard to spell or tricky to interpret, okay? If you have a name and you want to use, let's say you have, let's say a company called, and I have an example here, Missouri Lemonade Manufacturing. Okay, so let's say you thought that name sounded very professional, and that's what you named your LLC, Missouri Lemonade Manufacturing. What you really do is have a lemonade stand that goes to different events and camps out outside and sells lemonade. You don't want to have to put Missouri Lemonade Manufacturing on all of your marketing materials, on your Facebook page, because that doesn't really give customers a good indication of what it is that you really do and what you provide. In this case, this will be a great time to use what we call a DBA or a fictitious name, okay? DBA or fictitious name, both the same thing, is in a way for you as the business owner to use a name that that isn't your business name, okay? Several reasons why you might want to use a DBA. And so the DBA for this example, let's say if the business name was Missouri Lemonade Manufacturing, the business owner could register a DBA, let's say John's Lemonade Stand or John's Lemonade. That would be the DBA that he would register. And then he could use John's Lemonade Stand on all of his marketing materials, on his website, when he's corresponding and communicating with customers, versus having to say Missouri Lemonade Manufacturing LLC every time, okay? So the benefits of using a DBA or to give you added flexibility, okay? It can also help you to structure your business when you have several different brands. Let's say if you're a company like Pepsi or Frito-Lay, when you have all of those different sub-brands underneath that company, you don't want to be stuck using Frito-Lay LLC or Frito-Lay Incorporated in all of your correspondence. So those will be the benefits of using a DBA. Also, if you registered your name as Amina Abdul Malik LLC at my house address, you don't want to necessarily provide that LLC to everyone that you're doing business with or these potential suppliers. So it can also be a way to protect your privacy. And then the number one reason why people use a DBA is to strengthen their brand names and for marketing purposes. So if you're a local brewer and you have two different parts of your business, one is the consulting firm and one is the actual brewery, you could register two DBAs to use to kind of keep both of those parts of the business separate, okay? If you have a name that you figure out for your company and you think is going to be off to the races with it and someone's going to try to take that name, you can reserve a corporate name on the Secretary of State website for 180 days. And one of the first things to do when you go to the Secretary of State website, you're able to do a business search and check to see if someone is already using the name that you would like for your business as well, which is one of the things I recommend you all doing first before you select the business name. Okay, so let me go ahead here to the chat. Okay, Dia, you asked here if they sell interest as an LLC. So if you sell your interest as in an LLC, they do not have to become a member. So if you were selling your interest as an LLC and there were still partners attached to it, they would become members. But if you sold 100% interest in an LLC, then that would essentially be then terminating it. So if you were just by yourself, but if you had other people, then they would become members with their interest. If they have an interest in the LLC, they are a member. And thank you for that question, Dia. Christian says, my LLC was incredibly cheap and easy to form. That's great. I have a bunch of clients where I reached them a few weeks too late and they've already went and spent $300 on LegalZoom. And, you know, so be very careful. And if I didn't, before I started doing this type of work, I would have went the same place. So you don't know what's out there until you do know, but I'm glad it was cheap for you to file. Paula asked, once you file an LLC, can you take it to another state? So yes and no. So technically you would want to go and then move the LLC and register the LLC in that state. You could keep the LLC in Missouri and say that it was based here in Missouri and that you're doing online sales. So it all depends on the type of business and what you're doing. But traditionally, you would want to go and register and move the LLC to another state. But yes, you can. You can take the LLC to another state. In Patterson asked, can multiple DBAs be used for one business? Yes, yes, they can. And the cost of the DBAs are $7. So each DBA or fictitious name is going to be $7 each. And I see that was your question, Paula, so hopefully you got that. So yep, there's $7. Yep, Christian, thank you for jumping in and helping answer that question. And yep, the DBA is considerably less. The LLC is going to be $50, and then your LLC will actually own that DBA, and the DBA is typically $7. All right, thank you all so much for those questions. And of course, after the presentation, I will reiterate this again. I know that Eleanor sent out a link before the class for you all to get registered as clients on my end so that I can send you all the copy of the presentation and all these other resource documents. Towards the end of the presentation, I will leave that client sign up link in the chat for you all. So that I can make sure that I am getting all of this information to everybody after class as well. And of course, Eleanor, I'll be corresponding with you to make sure I get that done correctly. So thank you for your help too. So the remaining parts of the presentation today are all about getting legal. And Paula, I'll answer your question now. How soon should you register your business? I say definitely well before you are planning on collecting any money, collecting any sales. However, there is not a rush to register your LLC. I have people who don't have a business plan, barely have an idea, and are ready to register your LLC. That's fine. We can register it, and it can sit for 6 months, but Paula says me. And that's fine. So we can register your LLC at any time, but I always recommend getting at least halfway through a business plan and adding structure to the idea and then going to register that LLC. Because we want to make sure that the business idea is feasible before we invest any money, any additional money into that particular LLC. So there's no rush to register it, but you obviously want to have it registered before you're starting the business. But there's no immediate rush. So business registration with the state of Missouri, if you're a sole proprietor, there is no real registration other than you registering your DBA if you want to do business with any other name other than your own legal name. If you are a limited liability corporation, we talked about that, the articles of organization being $50 online versus $105 if you submit them at the office. In EIN, as I see you mentioned here and asked, in Patterson, there is no cost to the EIN. That is also something I can help you get registered. That takes about 5 to 10 minutes. and it spits out the EIN automatically. The EIN is free, okay? And I'm going to talk about, the EIN actually is in my last section, so I'm getting to EIN as well. If you are a corporation, obviously you also have to register with the Secretary of State. And as I mentioned before, your fees for a corporation are based on the amount of potential capital and authorized capital that there is. So there are some different types of professional registrations that are necessary depending on if you're in one of these special industries, such as a doctor, a CPA or certified public accountant. Also, if you are doing anything with massage therapy, or even if you're a barber doing hair care, there are certain types of professional registrations you will need in addition to your basic business registration in the state. And there is actually a link to the list of different professions that have special registration needs in that business reference guide as well. And I will try to highlight that page because I know we did have some people with some potential professions on that list. So I'm just taking a note of that here. And then another thing I wanted to mention in regards to the business registration, I think it's going to be, it just left my head, but it will probably come back to me. Were there any questions before I go over to the tax section and talk a little bit about the EIN, the cost of employees, the difference between an independent contractor and employee? Were there any questions about that previous section at all? Okay. I see Jennifer asked what's going to be the best option for home health care. Typically LLC I've had several home health care clients. I have one that's been in business for years that actually was kind enough to counsel another client who was trying to start a home health care company, and they're registered as an LLC. And I know a lot of those clients are registered as LLCs just for flexibility's sake. In fact, one of my clients had registered as a C corporation in the beginning and then changed over to LLC once they realized all of the ramifications. So LLC is probably going to be your best bet. No problem. Thank you for the question, Jennifer. So step 7, as we wrap it on up, is taking care of taxes. This area, we're always going to recommend that you speak with a tax professional and find someone that can assist you in this realm of taxes. However, on a base level, you as an employer should obtain a federal employer identification number, okay? Now, there are a lot of, excuse me, if you don't have employees, you technically do not need a federal EIN number. In fact, if we work together and I walk you through creating an EIN, when you put in that you are a single member LLC or a single owner LLC, it will tell you if you don't have any employees, you don't need the EIN. However, you do need the EIN. The EIN is seen as the social security number for your company, okay? So any correspondence you have with the IRS or the federal government, they are going to use your EIN as identification. You have to have an EIN if you have employees. That is the number that goes on the top of any W-2 you receive. And it allows you to be identified by the government. And then it also allows you some flexibility and another layer of protection as the business owner, because sometimes you're able to use your EIN on supplier applications or applications related to your business versus having to use your social security number, okay? So it adds that extra layer of professionalism and protects you a little bit as the business owner in some cases. When it comes to federal income tax, don't pay the dumb tax like me a few years ago with my LLC, and please estimate and pay your quarterly tax if you expect to owe tax of $1,000 or more at the end of that year, okay? When you are self-employed, and let's say you are an independent contractor, if you've gotten a 1099 or any of that in the past, or you've done a project for someone, that money came through with no taxes in it, and it looks beautiful. It's beautiful. But what isn't beautiful is you don't pay those, if you don't allocate and allocate taxes from those funds that you receive, at the end of that year, you will end up with a large tax bill. So please, if you are starting off your small business by just doing independent contracting here or there, please make sure that you are allocating and estimating and paying that self-employment tax, okay? When you have employees, they can get very costly. And that is one of the reasons why Missouri is a very attractive state to use independent contractors. And I'll get into what an independent contractor is, but when you get employees, they come with a lot of costs, okay? When you get employees, you immediately then have to contribute FICA as well as Social Security and collect those things from their paychecks as well, okay? So Social Security, your Medicare, federal unemployment. As soon as you get employees, all of those are things that have to be allocated from their paychecks. When it comes to state and local taxes, best practice is to always reach out to the city or county that you will be doing business in and get a clear understanding from them directly on what types of registration or licensing are needed. There are over 100 different municipalities in the St. Louis area, as we know, and each one has a different set of rules regarding small business ownership, okay? We can get as complex as Chesterfield, which throws you through a bunch of hoops, or you can go to unincorporated St. Louis County, which is pretty much no rules. So there is going to be differences depending on where the business is registered. So I recommend, and sometimes I can help clients with this as well, reaching out to the city or county that the business is located in, like the address where it's registered, and then also finding out what's necessary in the municipality that it will be doing business in, or where it will be taking its customers at. From a state standpoint, you all are blessed and lucky that you are starting your businesses and starting this journey now. In the past, in order to get your Missouri retail sales tax license or Missouri identification number, which is a number you will need if you were selling any tangible products or goods, or if you're hiring an employee, back in the day, you used to have to pay a bond to get that retail sales tax number based on an estimate of your first month's sales. And so what I would do is we would just have a very low estimate for first month sales. However, they have eliminated that bond completely now, and now you're able to get your Missouri ID number, which is the Missouri retail sales tax number now, at no cost. And that's also another online application that I can assist you with filling out that is directly on the Department of Revenue's website. So if you are planning on selling goods, you have to have that Missouri identification number. It will explain to you how to collect taxes and how much that tax rate is going to be based on where the business is registered, okay? So some counties have higher tax rates than others, and it will break that down and have that explained in a packet they send you via mail. Typically, that packet does take about 2 weeks for you to get, but it will explain how you're supposed to collect the taxes and what rate you're supposed to collect them on, okay? Also, when you call the city and county that you're going to be doing business in, they should also inform you of any particular local taxes that may be imposed on your company. The last 2 steps here, covering yourself, you can't forget to do this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this employee side because I think I've talked about it a lot today, that employees cost you money as well as make you money. So keep that in mind. If you do have employees, you're going to have to withhold the federal income tax as well as Medicare, Social Security, and FICA. And if you plan on employing 5 or more people, you also will have to have workers' compensation insurance, okay? Independent contractors are going to be your best bet as a small startup business owner. Independent contractors are those people who, if you've ever received a 1099 before, those are individuals who do project-based work, not on an everyday basis, who have a lot more autonomy within the work that they do, and are not everyday employees doing the same thing with a high level of supervision. Now, that definition sounds very confusing because it is. There is a document within the reference guide that is a 25-point checklist of how to determine the difference between an independent contractor and an employee. Missouri is one of the looser states on independent contracting, but be very careful that you're not abusing your independent contractor, because if they're doing the same things every day and underneath your immediate control, they may actually be an employee. But a lot of times for you as a startup owner, you can lean on independent contractors, and that is a huge benefit for you because you don't have to deal with any of the tax ramifications, okay? If an independent contractor is paid more than $600 in that calendar year, then the employer must file a 1099 to them, letting them know and describing how much they were paid. Business insurance, another form and way to protect yourself. If you are dealing with food, youth, or special industries that are higher risk, you want to talk to an insurance broker and categorize that risk and analyze what needs to actually be insured. There are several different types of business insurance. For most startups that are just doing consulting, you're not going to have a large need, or if you're a service-based industry, you're not going to have a large need for large levels of business insurance. However, best practice with this is to analyze what might need to be insured for your company. Do you have any equipment, any intellectual property, any people? And then from there, speak to an insurance broker to determine the different options for your insurance. I'll be honest, outside the areas of construction, healthcare, things like that, you're not going to find, insurance shouldn't cost you a bunch of money up front if you are doing service-based things, okay? But best practice is to figure out what type of insurance you need well in advance to protect yourself. One of the things also, I keep mentioning things in this reference guide, but there is a referral document that has a list of different referral resources, and that's going to be attached in there as well. So if you eventually need to find a business insurance broker, we have a list of them that have been vetted and worked with clients in the past as well that are here in the local area. So that will be attached. Intellectual property has become more and more important as we come into more of a digital era and information moves so fast now. Intellectual property involves a few different main components. Your trademarks protect all of your written work, so your logos. If you have a logo that you think is just out of the park, sounds or any words or symbols that indicate that products or services come from a particular company, that's going to be something that you trademark. A patent protects things, your products, your components of those things. Trade secrets actually don't have any type of formal protection, but trade secrets are any of those items or ideas where if the public got access to them, it would be a large detriment to their creators. So the formula for Coca-Cola or the spices in the KFC chicken, all of those could be considered trade secrets. Best practice, just like with insurance, is to speak with an IP attorney if you feel like you are concerned with any of your intellectual property. I say this because the application or the process for filing for a trademark is not very hard. The actual application is not very long or challenging. However, what is very strenuous and challenging is searching for already existing trademarks, patents, and copyright. You need a professional to help you through that. You could search one database and still not have access to everything. So if you feel like you have intellectual property that needs to be protected, work with an intellectual property lawyer. And that brings me to the bail team. Now I should be good. So sorry about that. My audio just randomly dropped off. I guess it was like you were talking too much. So I'm back. So sorry about that. So right now is the time for you to figure out who the bail team is going to be for your company. You don't have to have these people on retainer, but you need to have a clear understanding of your bail squad. And these are the people that will get you out of any trouble or help you before you get into any trouble with your company. And that will be your banker, your accountant, your insurance agent, and your lawyer, okay? So start to have an idea of where you'll be able to find these important players as well as mentors, okay? People who have been around the block either in your business industry or within small business in general. You already have a business counselor in me, but you'll probably find some additional ones down the line. But any of those roles that you can see your business needing down the line are the things you need to start thinking about now as you start planning for this business. And then we talked about licensing. On the federal level, it starts with the EIN. On the state level, it starts with the Missouri identification number if you're selling products. If you're selling special products such as tobacco, I saw somebody mention herbs, liquor, those have special state requirements. And then, as I stated, best practice is to contact the city or county which you will be doing business in to determine exactly what you need. And finally, the last section, starting off strong. When you're thinking about, so after you have your plan, you have your business idea, someone mentioned how do they get a business bank account set up without the EIN? Typically, the bank, if you have completed your business plan, you've registered the business, typically you can take your articles of organization or any of your registration paperwork. If you're an LLC, that will be called your articles of organization, as well as a copy of your federal EIN number. However, a lot of banks don't require that EIN number. I recommend going to local credit unions for your first business bank account because they have much lower fee structures and a lot more flexibility typically than the big banks do. And when I went, my business bank account, one of them, my first one, was set up with First Community Credit Union. And I don't believe that they asked me for my EIN, but it's always best practice to just have that EIN anyway. It looks professional and it's your federal identifier. So I would recommend having your articles of organization for your LLC, a copy of that EIN number, and that is, and an operating agreement. That is another one of the things I'm going to send out after class. The operating agreement template. We have a basic template for an operating agreement, and what an operating agreement is a document that describes the structure of the company. So it describes who the managing members are, who owns what, and who can make decisions on behalf of the company. So the template that we have, we've been using it for over 10 years, well before I was with the organization, and it will simply state that you are the sole managing member of the company and no changes can be made without your consent. So the template I'll send is about a 3-page Word document, and it has spaces colored for you to just plug in your business name and that business address in the spots that it needs, and that would be what you would be able to use to take to the bank and get your business bank account set up. You also need to set up an accounting system of some sort, whether that be as simple as you writing down every sale you make on a piece of paper and everything you spend, or something more robust such as QuickBooks or Peachtree. In the future, we don't have it scheduled now, but Eleanor and I will be also scheduling hopefully an introductory QuickBooks class for you all to learn more about QuickBooks online. I highly recommend using that for accounting purposes because it integrates with everything else, and the application on your phone is very, very intuitive and allows you to just scan and copy receipts in by taking pictures, and it automatically starts to create some of those financial statements that you'll need to keep up with all of your accounting as well. Whatever system you use, you need something that is going to keep track of all of your expenses and all of your income as well. And I think that last slide was actually, I should have cut that one out, but that is actually all I have for you all today. And I'm going to look at the chat here for some questions. Krista said, thanks, Zoom. Right. Thanks a lot. And Paula says, do you have a template for one of the articles of organization? So Paula, the articles of organization are public record. So I could give you the name of my company, and let me go ahead and pull up something really quickly so that I can put this in the chat for you guys. But you could pull up any business and see their articles of organization. So the template, there isn't a template for it, but the article of organization is the registration document that's created once you register the LLC, if that makes sense. And I see John, it's just been a great intro to business. So in relation to the economic disruption, there were a few slides here that, I apologize about that, because there were a few slides that were supposed to be attached onto this that are not. But specifically, John, I was hoping that, I'll say this in relation to the economic disruption and starting a business in relation to that. The main thing to note is, and I think the reason why, John, that there's not anything directly saying, oh, this is what you need to do during an economic disruption, is that you're really doing the same things in starting a business now as you would before this economic disruption. However, there is extra and special things that you need to consider during this time. And I love to speak with you one-off about that, so we could kind of discuss it in relation to your exact idea. So obviously right now, we're not telling people to go and start a restaurant, but you want to be aware of the trends that are happening right now in our economy. But the steps to starting a business and the mindset and the mentality you need and the things you need to know are still going to be the same right now in this economic disruption. But John, I would love to speak with you one-off about that as well, and kind of answer some more questions. And thank you, Jennifer and Karen, for those replies as well. So I think with that being said, if there aren't any questions, I will let Eleanor speak to you all about some of their services that they have. And I'll even say right now, in this economic disruption, because I don't want to start rambling because I will, this can even be a very attractive time to start certain types of businesses. But it all depends on the type of business it is and and how you structure that business idea as well. And I'll leave it to you, Eleanor. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Amina. This was fantastic. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. I'm Eleanor Chatterton. I'm a librarian here at the St. Louis Public Library. And we have 2 more programs coming up in November and December that I mentioned at the beginning. I just put links to them in the chat. So you can, if you enjoyed today, you can go and register for those. And as Amina mentioned, we are planning programs for January, February, March right now. I'll be sending a follow-up email with a link to a recording of today's program, as well as some other resources, including the ones I'm about to just run through quickly right now. And if you're here, you've gotten my email, so you have my email and my phone number, and I'd be happy to hear from you. What do you want? Tell me what you want to see. So there were 3 things that Amina mentioned that I'm going to talk about. The first, strengthening your brand name for marketing purposes and protecting that brand name. A DBA is different from a trademark, and I can help you understand the difference if this is the first time you started thinking about trademarks or any intellectual property protection. I'm the Patents and Trademarks Librarian. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't answer your legal questions, but I can guide you to the sources of information. I can ask you some questions to help you figure out some answers, and if you do decide to hire an attorney, which is often a great idea, you'll show up better informed and you won't be paying them hundreds of dollars an hour to teach you things that you can get from the library for free. She also mentioned grants. What I know about grants is that they are not often available for for-profit enterprises. That is about the limit of my knowledge about grants, but my colleague Lisa Thorpe, who runs the Grants and Foundation Center here, is an expert, and I would be happy to put you in contact with her, and I know she would be just as happy to talk to you about that. And then finally, market research. Some people have favorite TV shows or favorite podcasts.
Uh-oh. she had this trouble earlier where she was frozen. Can you all see me? Okay, everyone else is still moving. I saw she was frozen. She'll probably jump back in a minute, but I think she was alluding to the fact that when I was talking about the psychographic traits. Oh, there you are. Eleanor, there we go. I hear you now.
Did I cut out? My internet connection is apparently unstable, but everything else about
wow. At the library.
At the library.
But go ahead.
So yeah, if we cut out now, I would be happy to talk to you over the phone, answer email questions, do this newfangled video chat. We can work through the glitches. You are also welcome to come in. The St. Louis Public Library is open. Things are a little bit different now. There's limited time. I would encourage you to make an appointment. It's not like I'm going to go out and take a cruise, but I do take a lunch break every day. And if you make an appointment, we can make sure to be set up to keep things as safe as possible for all of us. And so I will send out an email with information. I look forward to hearing from you. Just remember, answering questions is a large part of what we do here at the library, and just remember that the library is here for you. And that is all I've got.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. I hope to see you all next month for our next offering, and I have posted the link to sign up for to become a client with us directly in the chat, and I hope to send out all of this follow-up information to you all tomorrow. And thank you so much for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good day.